Hello, and welcome to my presentation on meeting the need for ecologically appropriate native plant materials in the Mojave Desert. My name is Judy Perkins. I'm the Mojave Desert Ecoregional Native Plant Program Coordinator with the Bureau of Land Management. The Mojave Desert ecoregion has increasing needs for appropriate native plant materials for restoration. And one of the causes for that need is increasing wildfires within the Mojave, and along with the fires, increasing spread and density of invasive annual grasses. One of the big concerns with both fire invasives is the loss of critical habitat for the federally threatened Mojave Desert tortoise. So there has been in the past a lack of appropriate native plant materials for the Mojave, and we are trying to meet that need now following three parallel paths concurrently, moving forward to ultimately get the right quantities of the right seed for the Mojave. The first pathway is research focused, and I'm going to talk about the development of seed transfer zones for the Mojave, and then development of tools for designing restoration seed mixes. At the same time, all of our starter seed for all of the research and for seed increase is coming from wildland seed collections, primarily through the Bureau of Land Management Seeds of Success program. And then along with this, we're of course trying to increase native plant material production with developing techniques for some of these species that in the past have not had any protocols for growing seed or harvesting seed, and then trying to increase field capacity for growing Mojave species, and then ultimately getting these species into large-scale commercial seed production to meet the need. I'm going to start out by focusing on the research pathway, and this is research being done by USGS through partnerships with the Bureau of Land Management. So the USGS at the Western Ecological Research Center at the Henderson Field Station has completed provisional seed transfer zones for the Mojave. There are now 10 seed zones completely within the Mojave, and then another 11 seed zones that kind of lap into the sides. These provisional seed transfer zones actually include other Southwest desert areas adjacent to the Mojave as well. They're based on 11 climate variables, including 6 precipitation variables and 5 temperature variables. So they're actually pretty fine-tuned for the Mojave Desert. In conjunction with developing the seed transfer zones, USGS has developed this handy tool called the Climate Distance Mapper tool. And it's available to the public at this website. It has multiple capabilities, but one of the most basic ones that is really valuable for folks in the field doing restoration is you can input the location of your restoration site, and it will model out areas that would be appropriate for collecting seed or having sources of seed for your restoration site. And it can also model out, how appropriate. You can have areas that might be marginally appropriate or really, really appropriate. Or you can also put in requests to get a model of a future projected climate for your restoration site, based on climate models that are currently available. And so you could have a seed mix that incorporated seed both for the current conditions and for the future conditions with this tool. In addition to the climate-based seed transfer zones, USGS has been working with the California Botanic Garden, formerly known as Rancho Santa Ana Botanic Garden, for developing genetics-based seed transfer zones for some of our priority restoration species. And these have been completed for desert globe mallow and Nevada joint fir. They're nearing completion for desert Indian wheat. Currently in progress for 3 more species, yellow cups, white bursage, and Indian ricegrass. And then the next species coming in the pipeline will be Eastern Mojave buckwheat. The completed empirical or genetic seed transfer zones are available online at the Western Wildland Environmental Threat Assessment Center, or the WWTAC Seed Zone Data Site. And the provisional seed transfer zones are also available there too for the Mojave. there's a link here for the website and also a link for the ecological applications paper that documents how these genetic seed zones were developed. So those are the seed transfer zones. The USGS is also working on another handy tool for developing seed menus. So if a person has a restoration site and they are trying to come up with a menu of species that they would like to include in their seed mix, this is a tool that can help. It follows a similar format to the climate distance mapper tool, so you can input the location of your restoration site and have it come up with a seed menu suggestion for you. This seed menu tool is based on species distribution models, and those have been developed now for 50 priority Mojave species. And they are based on a combination of climate variables, topography variables, and remote sensing information to model out the probability that any given species would naturally occur or do well within a particular location. So this is an example of a species distribution model for Agnathrem hymeneoides, or Indian ricegrass. So all of these are stacked into the tool, and the user can designate a threshold, a species-specific threshold, for the probability that these species might occur on their restoration site. So it could be set at 80% probability or 50% probability, or whatever the user would like. And that will dictate what species are kicked out by the model. This can be customized for the goals of a particular restoration site. So the user can input life history traits. For instance, if you're targeting a site for pollinator restoration, you might be looking at bloom season or flower type. If it's for desert tortoise restoration, you could target species that are good for desert tortoise use. So all those will go into the model, and it will come up with a suggested seed menu for your site. So these are some handy tools that can be used for restoration. So now I'm going to move on to the seed collections and native plant material production and go into more detail about what we're doing in those areas. So like I said, all of our seed for restoration is starting out with wildland seed collections through the Seeds of Success program. Within the Mojave, we now have around 2,500 collections of seed from the Mojave. And these have been collected by a variety of seed crews, including California Botanic Garden, Chicago Botanic Garden, Flagstaff Arboretum, Great Basin Institute, and American Conservation Experience, as well as some other interns that are based in different BLM field offices. And collectively, they have made over 800 new collections just since 2016. You know, in the past, the SOS program was typically targeting 10,000 seeds or more, but as we're moving towards larger scale plant material production for restoration, we're now shifting to much larger collections, so up to half a pound each. But even those are not necessarily the quantities of seed that we need to take to commercial growers for large scale seed increase. So one of the projects that we started this year is a seed bulking project that is being done through a partnership with Institute for Applied Ecology at the California City Correctional Facility. So this is a project that all of the staff and the inmates involved have been really excited about. They are taking some of our smaller SOS seed collections and growing them out for 6 different species, 3 perennial and 3 annual. And then the seed produced from this project will hopefully get us larger quantities that on a scale that we can take to a commercial grower for seed increase at a larger scale. And then, like I said, for a lot of these species, they're really challenging to grow commercially, and there are no established protocols for either how to grow them or how to harvest the seed. So we have a new contract with Mojave Desert Land Trust that started this year to do a trial grow out with 3 annual species that are really important food species for desert tortoise, but are not available commercially. So Medina is working on developing some growing techniques and seed harvest techniques, and then those techniques and the produced seed will be provided to the BLM for further use. Another really cool project we have going is with Victor Valley College. And this is a kind of a dual purpose project where it trains students to develop native plant materials for restoration while also actually developing the plant materials that then the BLM can use or we can use for larger scale increase as well. And so the students develop capstone research projects and test different ways of propagating the plants or harvesting seed, whatever they decide to use for their research, and then they go ahead and produce plant materials. Between 2018 and 2020, they've produced 2,740 container plants for BLM restoration projects. And then this year, they expanded their work to doing a pilot seed increase project out in the field on campus. And so they've been able to grow and harvest some seed from 3 different species out there, 2 perennial and 1 annual. So this is really promising. They're looking at the coming years, really expanding the seed increase projects in the field and really doing what they can to try to promote larger scale commercial seed increase, hopefully in the Western Mojave area. We're also trying to grow growers and get more growers interested in working with Mojave native plants. So this is a project we have through an interagency agreement with Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Colorado River Indian Tribes at Ahakav Preserve. So they have a lot of agricultural fields that they're cleaning up and trying to convert over to growing Mojave native seed for seed increase. And so they're looking at perennial species for which we have some known growing protocols and seed harvest protocols. And hopefully this will get going soon. Then ultimately what we're trying to do is get large scale seed increase going through contract so that we can stock up seed in very large quantities where it's readily available for post-fire rehab, for restoration projects, whatever it's needed for in the field. And one of the tools we have to do that with species that have no growing techniques is the BLM Western State Seed Increase Indefinite Delivery, Indefinite Quantity contract. We currently have 15 Mojave species on that contract right now. So the way this works is contractors bid on the overall contract and then the BLM submits delivery orders for particular species from particular seed transfer zones. And then the seed produced on these contracts is paid for under a working capital fund. That seed goes into the BLM National Seed Warehouse System in Boise, Idaho. And then field offices or other agencies can purchase this seed for restoration. And then the purchase funds return to the working capital fund so that it can be used to grow out more seed. So that's a really quick overview of some of the things we're doing within the Mojave Native Plant Program to ultimately reach the goal of getting sufficient quantities of the right seed for the right place for Mojave restoration. And with that, I would like to say I'm always happy to hear from folks who have questions or suggestions or concerns. Here's some contact information and also a link for accessing information on the National Seed Strategy. So with that, I thank you for listening to my presentation and have a good day.